Hello, everyone. Today we are going to talk about the web development frameworks available in the Python, and we will be listening to the all the trends and the technologies that the Python use for their web development processes. If you already aware about the Python, you already have aware about the Flask and Django and the fast APIs. But if you are a little bit beginner, we'll be looking into that step by step. We'll be talking about the differences between them, the Flask, the Django, and the fast API, and we'll look into their ecosystems. What are the benefits of using one over other? Obviously, I'm going to use the Google AI mode for a lot of our research and getting the answers from the web via the LLM. And the reason for using a Python for the web development APIs is that Python has become a massive giant inside the industry. Obviously, the industry has evolved due to the AI mod and due to the massive gatherings of the frameworks used in the AI. So, if we ask that latest trends in Python for web development. In 2026, Python remained the dominant language for the web development, fueled primarily by its status as the default language for artificial intelligence and data science. So obviously, the reason for Python to dominate the field is the AI. Data science and AI is the pretty much dominant reasons because that makes it how to extend it for the AI usage. And it is an asynchronous framework, so the dominance of asynchronous framework is pretty obvious, and modern web application increasingly require real-time features in high concurrency. That's why the dominant frameworks are the asynchronous frameworks, and the most popular one is the fast API. Obviously, the fast API has become the fastest growing Python web framework, and especially for building performance critical APIs. And due to the rise of the React and front end Java front end frameworks, that fast API is the microservice based architecture has become increasingly popular, so the fast API is becoming really popular. Also, the serverless architecture has become the dominant in the field, the serverless architecture. And that's why it is very obvious to take all the load from the backend and shift it to the client side. That's why the rise of the React framework and the rise of the uh, API based frameworks are pretty obvious. So the API based architecture, like the client server architecture, has become the very dominant in the field. That's why the fast API quickly gains the attraction. Also, the fast API is popular due to their asynchronous nature and due to handling a lot of traffic other than the Flask. The Flask has taken the place in the industry for a very, very long time. And if you are aware, I also starting a series on the web development with the help of the Flask. So I'm also creating a Flask based series where I'm exploring all the frameworks and I'm creating a software of the repairing shop management system with the help of Flask. The reason for choosing the Flask is to take you from the ground up and giving you all the pros and cons and where the limits will get off of the Flask and where do we need a new framework. So to really understand the capabilities of both of them. So that's the main reason for using the Flask as a starting framework. So after that, if we go to the asynchronous port in the Django 5.2 has continued to mature its asynchronous port. So basically, moving toward a fully async capable ORM. In the Django 5.2, if we go to the Google and search for the Django, and the latest framework of the Django is a high level open source Python framework that enables rapid development. You will get a lot of Django based web apps. So the Django is a very dominant framework in the web development in the Python ecosystem. So the Django comes with a pre-built modules. You will get a lot of authentication and admin dashboard and a lot of things pre-built in the Django. So you will get a lot of them pre-built, right? So if you come to the official website of the Django, you will see that the latest Django framework is obviously getting a lot of asynchronous functionalities to overcome their previous synchronous natures. So the latest release is 6.0. If you go to the documentation of the Django, it will tell you about the major tutorials that you can quickly get starts with, how to send the requests and templates in templating engine, and you can also create a microservice based architecture in the Django. So that's the another reason for Django being a very dominant framework in the industry. And if we come back to our frameworks are natures and the AI and agentic web applications. So the agentic web application is becoming popular. The era of 2026 is started from the agentic AI, and now almost everyone is using the agentic AI, and everyone is making their applications around some kind of AI agents. And the AI orchestra is being very popular, where a lot of AI agents are working together to solve some base problem. There is another pretty basic thing that I am pretty annoyed with, that most of people trying to solve pretty basic problems with the AI. So most of the time when even the AI is not required, people are using the AI. I'm pretty much not aware about that. I mean, why they using it's kind of overkill. Because you can use AI for everything doesn't mean you have to. So the agentic AI developers shifting from a simple chatbots to complex AI agents integrated directly into the web backends using the frameworks like LangChain, LangGraph, and Pydantic AI. So Pydantic AI is another, and Lang ecosystem, the LangChain and LangGraph. We'll explain and talk about these frameworks specifically in later. And for now, let's keep going and see the real-time inference. Obviously, as you may be aware, that the embedded applications are growing, like the IoT applications, and the edge AI is also evolving. Most of the AI fields are being pretty saturated right now, and the need for the more AI fields is like where you need the agentic AI And you should be, if you are going into the AI field, you should be very careful that most of the AI field that listed as an AI developer is not about the AI. They are just using the APIs currently, because everything is API based. They are just consuming the AI APIs and claiming that they are the, you know, the AI developers. So that's obviously not the case. So it is not the case that you are just using the AI for one thing and you say that it's the AI development. So the real-time inference is very popular, and we need the real-time updates in the web framework. So we need that. The Fast API pretty much dominant in that with the latest, fastest inference time. And AI models from Hugging Face or OpenAI are best served behind the high-speed fast API endpoints. That's the main reason for Fast API to being dominated in this field. And for sure, the Rust power tooling for Python, the Rust is pretty much taking the field of the the C. Rust is taking the place of C from the low end devices. So the Rust being the efficiency and the speed of the C language, but coming with the Python capabilities, the UV is a Rust based package, and it's a project manager that unifies the virtual environment and dependency management. So the performance engine's new app like Granian, which is also a Rust base. So if you go to the web and look for the Granian, you will see that it's another Rust-based systems. And the Gunicorn is high-speed asynchronous native execution. So if you are aware with the traditional Flask-based inference of the framework, you maybe heard of the Fast API and the Unicorn. So that will handle the more traffic with the less load on the server. And the serverless evolution is basically microservices. Businesses are using Python lightweight frameworks like Flask and Fast APIs quicker to build the APIs and break down the monolithic app into a scalable, independently deployable services. The reason for using the microservices is like they will help you to build independent and scalable system. So the main thing about the microservices is that you shift chunks, so everything is being shifted to the lighter and simplified, and one core responsibility is done with one microservice. So you basically divide the task into multiple services, and you will go break down, you try to go as much short list as you can for a single responsibility. So that's how you go for the microservices. So Flask and Fast API is best suited for that. So serverless Python, AWS Lambda, and the Google Cloud Functions allow the pay-per-use scaling. So they are usually serverless means that they just sleeps in the background, and whenever someone calls that function, specific serverless function, that's the when it is called. So they just use it, So there is no need for that to be into continuous execution. So they just sleep when there is no user at all. So whenever a user calls about that serverless function. That's when they are being activated. It means the minimum server use and low cost, and it is scalable. So whenever you go from above that, it automatically scales. So AWS Lambda and Google Cloud Functions are best fit in that case. Python in the browser, WebAssembly. Historically, a backend only language like Python is expanding into the front end via WebAssembly, WASM. There are some frameworks, and the Python is replacing the JavaScript, but that is not very, the popular and not so accurate. So it is just in kind of experimental things. And security and DevOps. Lot of the era of the Python was only for the automation. Obviously, the Python is still used for the automation and a lot of scrapping stuff. But now, with the rise of the AI, the main reason for using the Python is to use the capabilities of the AI. Obviously, the other dominant frameworks in the industry like the Ruby on Rail have some packages being introduced to immerse the AI facilities, but due to the usage of the APIs, and you don't need Python to host them. Most of the time, the AI models are so heavy. I mean, let me tell you, what are the limitations? Let me discuss the limitations of using AI models in self-hosted environment. And why do we need to use the APIs for AI models? So basically what happens that when you use the model, it is very heavy, and you can't run it locally. That's why you use the OpenAI AI API case. But the problem is that most of the time you don't need the full model, instead obviously I didn't remember any AI model like the image generation model and the video generation model, which is being lightweighted and you can self-host. Obviously you need a GPU for that. If you have a decent GPU, you can use some kind of image generation model. So let me go to that direction. But for now, in 2026, the choice between the self-hosting AI models and using the managed APIs like OpenAI or the Anthropic depends on balancing control against the operational complexity. There are some limitations, that the massive infrastructure costs running useful production grade models like the 7B plus parameters. If you are not aware what this 7B plus is, and let me see if I have some control over there. No, no, that's not what I was asking. If I take this screenshot, and if you're not aware what this 7B is, this is basically the parameters. It means that kind of the you can assume that that's its window size and the parameter. I mean, that much parameter they are trained on. So basically that's the main you already you heard of like 1B, and like the models are 2B models, and there are even the models of like production grade 70B models. So that's kind of models are available. They requires high hardware such as the NVIDIA GPU. So that much GPU you require to run that models. But if you they are nearly cost you are $30,000 per month, so obviously that's very expensive. While purchasing hardware involves high upfront capital cost. If you want, you say that I will purchase my own NVIDIA GPU of H100, it will obviously require you to initial cost, you know. So you need that upfront cost, so which is obviously not suitable for low startups. And that's the main reason that you consider self-host you consider using the API keys rather than self-hosting. And obviously inferring the visual LLMs and the GPU drivers are obviously very costly. And there is a scalability. Managed APIs can scale instantly to handle traffic spikes. OpenAI and Google Gemini APIs are meant to be for the scalable. So if you are quickly scaling and you hit some traffic spike, you are basically good to handle that traffic spikes if you are using the APIs. But if you are not using the APIs, you are in no luck. So if you are self-hosting the AI models, and if suddenly the traffic goes massive into your application, your server may not be able to handle that spike. So API covers that. And self-hosted environment are limited by your physical hardware, and that's the main reason your hardware is limited. And scaling up to often requires months of planning and purchasing new equipment, so that's also the main reason. And the performance maintenance, achieving low latency, and if you want to self-host the model, there are some tricks like converting a quantized model and maybe using a low parameter model, and then improving their inference speed. There are some techniques and pruning and quantization where you take that bigger model and distill their knowledge and use that minimal model into your own system. That way, your low cost GPU with the minimal virtual RAM would be able to infer that model. So that way, you can use it. Okay, so why APIs are preferred: rapid time to market. You can integrate state-of-the-art models in minutes via single endpoint, and cost-effective, low moderate use. API use paper token. So everything that you may already aware about the API handling. So right, that's the main reason. Okay, so now if we move on, we have heard of we discussed the three main frameworks of web development frameworks, which are our topic of today's video. So let's move to the Flask, which we are working in our project, the repairing shop management software, which I'm streaming daily on approximately in the 8 p.m. at the Pakistan Standard Time. So I am building that live software. So it is built on a Flask. We are starting from the Flask, then we'll shift to the Django, and in the next application that we will be building a full stack project in the Python. That full stack project would be I'm planning two ideas I do have for my future project about the full stack using the Django. But the main thing, I want to build a Blink clone. If you're not available about the Blink, it's an IoT platform. Let me tell you what the Blink is. Yes. So basically, Blink is a leading low-code in Internet of Things platform designed to help developers and business quickly build, deploy, and manage connected hardwares. So that's the main reason for building a Blink clone. I want some self-hosted. My basic philosophy is to build something which you can self-host. You are not rely on the clouds. You are not rely on the third-party APIs, and you are not rely on any third-party systems. Everything you build, you own it. So that's the main philosophy which I work on. And obviously you should own what you built, you should not be the being relying on the third party unless they are giving a good service for you. But there are a lot of people who are just not so much able to spend that capital and monthly expenses on subscriptions. So the era of the AI suddenly increased the subscription based models. Everyone is going after the subscription based pricing strategy. Obviously it is giving more revenue to the developers and feeding them and providing for them, but I'm a little bit concerned about that. I like the era in the early days where we buy once and we owns it, we buy some software like we buy the Microsoft and the Office suite and hello. uh, Due to the simulating the screen, it the chat is a little bit blurry in my screen, and I still didn't figured out how to look into the chat. I'm kind of new to the streaming, so I'm just learning as I go how to figure out. Walaikum assalam. Maybe you are. So that's the reason that I am concerned about the softwares. I like the era where we buy one time the software and we own it, and we don't have to pay every month for that software. But currently, the subscription based model is more popular. Every software you will see, they will ask for recurring income. So obviously if I look into as a software company or as a SaaS, the way to survive and way to continuously being alive in the SaaS, you have to be generating a recurring revenue. That's why the subscription based model is best fit. But it doesn't satisfy that if you pay a massive amount, you own that software. You don't own in anything in the subscription based model. And the reason for the subscription based model to being popular and being the only choice is because you the cloud systems, everything is on the cloud. So when everything is on the cloud, it means you don't own anything. So you have to be rely on the cloud systems. So I'm building some clones for the systems which I can use for my own, or people who are not able to buy the subscriptions, they can use. I mean, it's kind of open source. Anyways, I'm planning to build the Blink clone in my Django base project, and the core component of the Blink platform is that Blink.app is a native iOS and Android app builder where you can drag and drop pre-designed widgets, buttons, sliders, graphs to create custom user interface. And then there is Blink.cloud. This is the central server infrastructure that handle communications between the mobile app and your hardware. And the third one is Blink Console. It is a web-based application which is used to by the developer to manage device fleets and configure templates and monitor data. And then there is engine and libraries which you can use on your ESP32 or Raspberry Pi to communicate between the Blink ecosystem. And then there is the key feature. It says that hardware agnostic, supports over 400 hardware models and works across various networks including Wi-Fi, cellular, LoRaWAN, and satellite. Obviously, for the MVP of a Blink clone, I'm not planning to cover all of them. We'll be targeting on the Wi-Fi first, or Bluetooth maybe. And the white labeling, businesses can brand the mobile app with their own logo and the colors and publish it under their company name on the App Store or the Google Play. And the AI powered workflow, the modern versions of Blink include intelligent insight and advanced automation that can be triggered based on the sensor data and schedule events. So basically, it is being very popular using the Blink app for the IoT systems. So maybe I would be planning to build Django based systems in the upcoming series, but for now I am using a Flask. So let's move and see what is a Flask Python full ecosystem. The reason for asking this question is that I want to know, the Flask is a micro framework philosophy where a minimalist core is extended by a vast library. So basically, the philosophy of the Flask ecosystem is to be minimal. And if you have created any kind of Flask project, you would be aware that the Flask is used as a single page. You can create the whole website or the API in just one file, app.py or anything, and your Flask will run like a charm. So that's the minimalistic nature of the Flask, and obviously the Fast API do the same, makes them ideal. And the unlike the batteries included frameworks like Django, the Django is considered the battery included frameworks. It means you will get some custom built stack and the configurations, uh, but Flask don't comes with it, so you can modify the Flask according to your own style, your own need, and your own nature. So whatever suits you, you can configure Flask according to your own style of programming. That's the beauty of the Flask. And the minimalistic core, the base of the every Flask application is relies on the three standard components. A Worksurk is a WYSIWYG web server, which is a gateway interface utility library. It handles the communication between the Python application and a web server. And the templating engine is used currently, Jinja 2. It is a powerful templating engine. It used to generate the dynamic HTML content. So you can consider it as, if you ever worked in the Laravel, you may be aware of the Blade templating engine. The templating engine is very important component for the any full stack framework, mostly the backend frameworks. The PHP holds the Laravel framework, and the Laravel use the Blade templating engine. Similarly, the Python use the Jinja. The Django also use that Jinja 2 templating engine. I will explain what the templating engine is in a while. So let's move to the Click. It is a toolkit used to create the command line interface for the application. So if you have watched my stream about the today's video where I created some command line utilities for my web application. So basically, what why do we need that commands? So basically, we need to generate the commands due to the reason we need to create the migrations for our database which we created yesterday. We need to seed our data to the database, and that's why we need to create some commands for them. And if I compare it with the same PHP based Laravel framework, the Laravel introduced using the composer utility. So the composer utility comes to generate the commands for the PHP blade, and there is a click framework for generating the command line interface in the Flask. The primary extensions used with the Flask, because Flask is a lightweight and most full stack features are already added via the popular extensions. The database management is done through the Flask SQL Alchemy library, and this is the same library which we are using for our AI-based repairing shop management system, which we are creating through the Flask. And that library is used in the SQL Alchemy for the database management. This library can handle the PostgreSQL and the MySQL, while the Flask Migrate built on the Alembic handles the database version controls. So that's the main two libraries which we used today's stream. The yesterday. So it's 1 40 a.m. here. So obviously it's yesterday. So in today's stream, when I will again start, we will extend the further library usage with the Flask. And the security and authentication, the Flask login manager, we use the user sessions, while the Flask security 2 provides a comprehensive suite for registration, password hashing, and role-based access control. So if we look into this further, the Flask security allow you to quickly add common security mechanism to your Flask application. So basically, authentication via session and basic HTTP or token-based authentication, user registration, and role and permission management, account activation via email confirmation, password management utilities, and everything that you may need for your authentication process. You have this suite called the Flask Security. And many of these features are made possible by integrating various Flask extensions and libraries. And they include the Flask login, Flask mail, Flask principal, Flask WTF, and it's dangerous, a passlib, QR code, a web authentication, and authentication lib. These are additionally assumes you will be using a common library for your database connections and model definitions. The Flask security supports the following Flask extensions. So it supports the SQL Alchemy for your database. So that's what we are choosing. It uses the Mongo engine. If you are using a MongoDB backend, it uses the PV Flask utils and Pony ORM, which is not currently working. So you should be not considering that. And if you are a good developer and you could contribute to them, so they uh, claim they basically request that they need the help. Then the SQL Alchemy sessions. If we go down and deeper into the SQL Alchemy, this is the SQL Alchemy ORM and everything that you wanted to do with the database, and this is a pretty much good ORM which you can use, and that's the what we are using. So basically, if we you import from the SQL alchemy.orm, you can import the session, and after creating the engine, which whatever your database string connection string is, you can start a session. And inside that session you can add some objects and any other object, and then you can commit to the session. This session is instantiated with an engine which is associated with a particular database URL. And it is then used in a Python context manager, for example. So it is automatically closed at the end of the block. So that's how you commit to the session. You can also roll back by using session.rollback function. And you can also use a session maker. So basically, that's how you can use SQL Alchemy session. I am talking about that because in the today's streaming, which I will be doing at 8 p.m. of the Pakistan Standard Time, I'll be showing how to practically use that. And if you look further into their documentations, you can customize the usage pattern. And if you go to the emails section, you can pretty much generate the confirmation instructions. So I'll just hoping the airplane to pass by, so I'm waiting for that. Okay, so then you in the emails you have the username recovery and the reset instructions email. So that's a bunch of functionalities which you can use for in the security for the email related task. And how you can do that, you will be simply using the security class by passing your app and the data store. Then you can use this for mail context preprocessor, and with this simple dict function you can use that. So there are many configurations available associated with the emails. We'll be looking into the email related security, and when we'll be using the email related task. But if you come with the um if you mix send emails via task queues such as Celery, this is supported by providing your own implementation of the mail util class. So you have to provide your own mail util class if you want to do that. Let's come back, and if you want to configure the two-factor configurations, specifically adding the SMS, you need to use the API. Using as the second factor requires access to an SMS service provider such as Twilio, and this Flask security supports it out of the box. So for other SMS service provider, you will need to subclass the SMS sender base class and register it. How you can do that? You can simply use the SMS sender factory dot sender, and then you need to provide the service name. And you also need to install these extra packages which are Twilio and phone number slide. Okay, so you can set these configuration inside your config file, just like we created in our project. You can use that. And the basic theory of using this operation is that confirming a code as a part of user authentication requires that session cookies be received and sent part of the API. This is true regardless of whether the application uses form or JSON. So you need to enable that. That's how you basically will be using the two-factor authentication inside your Python Flask package, right? So if we come back and see if anything else we need to be discussing right now, and yeah, that's much pretty we need to know about that. And if we come back API development, we can use the Flask RESTful and Flask RESTX library, which are used to build the REST APIs, with the RESTX often preferred for its automatic Swagger and OpenAI documentation generation. So the next thing, it remains about the form and the form validation. A full stack framework must require a form validation framework, and WT Forms library is used to handle the secure user input and provide the built-in CSRF protection. So that's protection is basically used with the form validation. And then we have the real-time features, and if we want to use that, the socket IO is very solid library, and for the Flask we also have this library under the Flask socket IO. This is a standard for bidirectional if you want to add a real-time communication between the client and server, like a chat application, multi-room chat application, or even if you are using the video conferencing like application. So if you are aware, I already created a one application of the video chat between client and server and multiple clients, just like a Zoom calling. And I had already created that application demo on my YouTube channel with the Node.js and the Socket.io library. So you can do pretty much same with the Flask as well, using the Flask Socket.io library. And if we come to the latest trends, just in the 2026, the ecosystem evolved for the asynchronous port, while the Flask remain primarily WSGI based. The many developers are now using Quart, which is asynchronous compatible version of the Flask. And uh, if you are not using that, you can integrate Flask 3.x async views for the high concurrency tasks. So if your main concern is about the asynchronously, you can use either Quart or you can use the Flask 3.x async views. And if you want to integrate the AI, you obviously can use the LangChain. And for the DevOps and deployments, use of the UV for high speed dependency or the Docker is obviously an optimum choice. So the philosophy is plug and play. Choose your own tools which you want to use. And if you go for the Django, batteries are included. A pre-packaged tool set has been set up for you. You are basically you should be using that included batteries. Although you can configure the Django for your own style as well, but that requires a lot of cutting off wings and adding other wings. So you will end up using Flask. That's will how the Django and Flask is very close. If you grow your Flask project, you will notice that how much closer it will look like Django. So if you build one project in the Flask, then you build one project with the Django, you will already know the Django half. So basically, half of the Django framework you already will be aware. Maybe the 75% of the Django you will already know if you build some project in the Flask. So that's much powerful the Django is, and the Flask and Django are close enough. So you will see that if we take our series from building the project inside the Flask and then building one project in the Django, then we will also see use a Fast API to build over React and Fast API based system. So I will leave the Fast API to be used with the React. So The third project which I will be starting in my channel would be the Fast API and the React based project. I still have not thought about what kind of project I'm building for that combination, but we'll figure out as we progress through our series of full stack web development with Python. So the database is extension based with the SQL Alchemy, and Django has its own native ORM, which is kind of similar to the SQL Alchemy, but it's Django's native ORM. And if we talk about the security, the extension based Talisman and CSRF are available, and the Django has it built in. The learning curve in as shallow initial start and steeper at scale. And the if you start at the Django, it steep initial start and eventually it gets stable scale. And the primary use case, if you want to use the Flask, you may be using the microservices API and custom stacks. And if you want to build an enterprise grade data heavy portals, you should be choosing the Django. I think that's pretty much all for this stream. Is already 51 minutes long, so I don't want it to be as long as it should be. So I think that's pretty much all for this stream. And if you find it useful, don't forget to like and subscribe about that. So I'll take your leave, or if anyone have any questions, maybe if I continuously be available on the live streams, you will be knowing my join my journey by building the full stack web applications through the Python. And or if you are just enjoying the Python journey, you can join my channel as well. So thank you so much for today's stream, and see you in the coding session tomorrow 8 p.m. +5 GMT, which is a Pakistan Standard Time. And see you.